My name is Alex Walker. I'm 33 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the invisible backbone of my family's company. I made the numbers work when no one else could. I bridged payroll shortfalls, negotiated with suppliers, and sometimes even delayed buying essentials so I could keep the lights on. I thought that gave me value. I thought they saw it. I was wrong, but I'll get to that. Right now, here's the moment everything changed. On an ordinary Thursday morning, I checked my phone. I wasn't expecting anything, just bills, work emails. Then came a voicemail from my mom, Susan Walker. Her voice was clipped. Formal, no honey, no soft greeting, just Alex. Effective immediately, we're restructuring the company. You are out. Our lawyer will be in touch. My breath hitched. You don't need to hear it to feel it, the finality. My chest tightened, like someone cranked my ribcage in vice grips. Every foundation I'd built quaked. No negotiation, no explanation, just, you're gone. I stared at the screen until it glowed. I didn't reply. I didn't argue. I just hit understood and hung up. But inside, a different part of me came alive, a part that's been recording, calculating, gathering. You'll see why in a minute. To understand how we got here, you need to know how it started. My grandfather established Walker Fabrication in a small Oregon town after Wubby. When he passed, he split shares. Dad gets 40%, Mom 20%, and me 40% on the condition I was willing to work. I did. I dropped out of college right after high school. I learned operations, accounting, logistics. When Nathan, my older brother, would charm clients at dinners, I was comforting the creditors. When our margins dived in 2008, when the bank called twice a week threatening to freeze accounts, I sold my IRA to keep the doors open. Mom would pat my arm and say, sometimes in front of Nathan, Alex handles the numbers, bless his heart. He doesn't know real business. Nathan would laugh. Yeah, our bean counter keeps the lights on. I swallowed it because what else could I do? But each compliment, each pitying statement, carved me sharper into someone invisible. I became the silent safety net. But despite everything, I believed in loyalty. In the family ethos, I thought blood, I thought fairness. I thought if I kept sacrificing, one day they'd respect me as a partner, not just as the ATM. But then came the picture. A few weeks before that voicemail I told you about, I saw a post on Facebook, my mom and Nathan, smiling, shaking hands with a new partner investor. The caption announced a major strategic deal, new capital injection, growth. The company was changing. Slowly I scrolled and there was no mention of me. Nobody had told me. I learned about it on social media. In under a day, I felt small, feeble, discarded. I picked up the phone. I called Mom. She said, "It happened fast. We didn't think you needed to be involved. Since you don't work here every day." I felt the razor-thin edge of contempt wrapped in compassion. Then Nathan chimed in, arrogantly. "You wouldn't have understood anyway." Just like that, all my sacrifices reduced to nothing but a ledger. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I hung up. And the seed of something colder took root. From that moment, I began collecting bank statements, old emails, screenshots, my handwritten ledger from 2010, notes from supplier calls, receipts for payroll I covered. I kept it all not out of paranoia, but because I knew one day I'd need proof. They said I didn't matter. I made sure I didn't disappear. Back in my apartment, I sat at the desk late into the night. My fingers traced those lines of numbers as though decoding betrayal. The deeper I looked, the more I realized it wasn't just neglect, it was erasure, a pattern of marginalizing me, excluding me, pretending I'd vanish when I was needed. I remembered every email where they forgot to loop me in, every meeting without my name, every comment belittling me in front of clients, and I decided this stops on my terms. That's when I reached out to Maya Brooks, a corporate lawyer I studied with years ago. She agreed to help me because she's always believed numbers aren't neutral, and documentation is the ultimate witness. I briefed her, share distribution, undisclosed new partner, my exclusion, the contract clause I signed all along. She said, "We'll secure your 40%, we'll guard your rights." And just like that, I had a plan, not emotional revenge, but a strategic exit. With Olivia from Everpoint Capital, a quiet but sharp private equity group, I negotiated terms, a clean buyout of my stake, a clause that triggers full audit upon any hidden liabilities. That's the setup. Next episode, I'll take you through how I sold my share quietly, pressured by the same numbers I once tracked, and then hit rewind on years of collective silence. But for now, I'm sitting in my apartment, the phone still ringing on silent voids waiting to be filled, and I know for the first time I'll make them regret ignoring those numbers. The silence has turned deadly serious. When I finally clicked send on the final version of the sale paperwork, I didn't feel triumphant, I felt numb. The transaction moved fast. Maya was meticulous, she redlined every clause, every term, ensured my protection at every layer, and when Everpoint Capital officially wired the funds into escrow, it was done. I had sold my 40%. The business that had taken everything from me now owed me nothing. But the emotional math that didn't balance as easily, there was still a debt one not paid in dollars. The next 48 hours were quiet. Too quiet. I didn't check my phone much. I knew the email had gone out, the one where I replied simply, understood. No context, no emotion, just precision. But I also knew it wouldn't stay quiet for long. And sure enough, when I opened my phone the following morning, it was lighting up like a Christmas tree. 72 missed calls, 72. The first was Mom, then Nathan, then the office line, then a string of unknown numbers that I could only assume were lawyers, assistants, panicked partners. They didn't understand yet. They didn't know who had bought my stake. They assumed it was someone documental, someone they'd control. They were wrong. When I finally answered Nathan's call, it was like hearing a dam break. Alex, what did you do? The investor. They froze access to several accounts. They're demanding financials, audits, board meeting minutes. They're asking about years back. What the hell did you tell them? I didn't raise my voice, I didn't accuse, I simply said, they're doing due diligence, what partners do when they invest in a company they weren't informed of properly. There was a beat of silence. Then Nathan's voice dropped an octave, his usual bravado collapsing. They're digging. Alex, hard. They already flagged 3 discrepancies in our financials. We need to fix this. You need to undo this sale. Undo it, I asked. Slowly, like the way you undid my ownership. Like how you undid my stake, my presence, my voice. I let the words land like small explosions. I told you, I'm out. This is your mess now. It's your soul. I hung up. They called again, and again. Each time more desperate, but I never picked up. Instead, Maya did. Every communication went through her from that point on. That was the boundary. I had bled for years without one. Not anymore. Behind the scenes, Olivia and her team at Everpoint wasted no time. They examined decades of ledgers, cross-checked internal reports with my personal logs. What they found: patterns of reckless spending, undisclosed debts, and creative accounting swept under the rug by charm and sheer denial. My financial lifelines had patched over holes they never even admitted existed. The irony: my fastidiousness, once mocked by Mom and Nathan, became the weapon that exposed them. As the audits deepened, Olivia's team discovered that the recent partner deal, the very one they celebrated on Facebook, had been used to obscure an impending liquidity crisis. The cash injection wasn't just for growth. It was a desperate attempt to cover a $1.3 million deficit dating back 4 fiscal years. Debt I had unknowingly helped manage with my own savings. And now, the new partner wasn't having it. Everpoint froze hiring, froze all major spending, froze personal stipends, yes. Nathan's Audi lease was now under review, and they demanded full compliance or they'd push for legal action based on fraudulent representations. It wasn't just business anymore, it was liability. That's when the second wave began, the guilt. Texts from Mom, Alex, honey, we were just trying to protect the family legacy. You didn't have to go this far. And then the deflection. This isn't how family handles things. You should have come to us first. But I had. For years, in meetings, in emails, in sacrifices, I had shown up for this family in ways they never returned. They didn't listen, they dismissed, and now that the spotlight burned too hot, suddenly I was family again. No. In private, Maya told me something I'll never forget. You didn't destroy them, Alex. They destroyed their own illusion. You just refused to keep the curtain closed. But the most unexpected twist came from inside. A woman named Linda, who'd worked in payroll for 2 decades, reached out to Maya, quiet, loyal, largely ignored. She had seen everything. She provided emails, proof that Mom and Nathan had knowingly altered balance reports to secure that flashy deal. And worst of all, they had already planned to spin the blame on me if anything went wrong, claiming I handled finances and had hidden the truth. My stomach turned. So that was the plan. Use my meticulous record-keeping when it served them. Frame me when it didn't. They never expected me to leave. They certainly never expected me to fight back. Linda's documents sealed it. The investor now had not just numbers, but intent, a paper trail. And with that, the tone of calls shifted again from guilt to fear. The company was now on the verge of collapse. Regulatory fines loomed. Public reputation cracked. And still, I didn't speak. I let silence do what years of begging never could. But silence isn't the same as peace. As I sat alone that night in my apartment, I stared at my laptop. The bank balance had changed. I was financially free, but emotionally, I still saw the 12-year-old version of me wearing a too-large tie at Grandpa's funeral, promising silently to protect his legacy, to be the responsible one, the rational one. And now that tie felt like a noose I had finally unknotted. The war wasn't over, though, because what came next wasn't just legal fallout, it was personal. The neighbors, the community, old friends of the family, their opinions, their judgment, their choice of who to believe. I had prepared for battle. I hadn't prepared for loneliness. The fallout didn't stay in boardrooms and legal emails. It spilled into whispers at the local cafe, awkward silences at the community center, and the side eyes at church. Word spreads fast in small towns, even faster when it's juicy, especially when it involves the Beaumont family. I walked into a local grocery store one morning and felt it immediately. Eyes darted away. Heads dipped just a second too late. The cashier gave a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Nathan and my mom had started their campaign. According to whispers I caught wind of, I had betrayed the family, sold out for greed, ruined everything they had built. I didn't respond. Let them spin the narrative. Because I had something they didn't, the truth, and patience. It was Olivia from Everpoint who reminded me, reputation is elastic, but only if you stop pulling the lies. Let them snap back. People eventually remember who stayed consistent. Still, it stung. I wasn't just grieving the company, I was grieving community, belonging, the sense of being rooted in something that wasn't transactional. I had always been the steady one, the one who smiled politely, paid quietly, showed up when nobody else did. And now that I had finally drawn a boundary, it felt like I had exiled myself. Even worse, some people didn't know what to believe. Uncle Greg, my dad's brother, called me out of the blue. We hadn't spoken in over a year. Alex, I'm hearing wild things. Tell me you didn't sabotage your own mom. I laughed. Dry, bitter. No, Uncle Greg, I just stopped cleaning up behind her. That silenced him. But it was Linda Sweet, meticulous Linda, who slowly shifted the tide. After she testified in a closed-door arbitration hearing between Everpoint and my family, the documents she submitted became public record. A journalist from a mid-tier business publication got hold of them. Then everything changed. The article exploded. It painted a very different story: a loyal son quietly supporting a business through financial turmoil, while being publicly dismissed and privately used. It revealed not just the manipulation, but the emotional dissonance between what I gave and what I got in return. Suddenly, I wasn't the villain in their narrative, I was the counterpoint to it. People started looking at me differently, some cautiously supportive, some quietly apologetic, but others like Mom doubled down. She posted on Facebook, "Family should be unconditional. Betrayal is never justified, no matter the numbers." I didn't respond publicly, but inside I cracked a little. Because still she didn't see me. She saw an obstacle, a symbol, a rebellious variable in her vision of family harmony, not her son. Nathan, however, panicked differently. I got a call from his wife. "Rachel, Alex, he's unraveling. He's talking about selling everything, moving to Arizona, disappearing. He's not eating. Honestly, I think he never imagined you'd fight back." I believed her. Nathan had built his world on charm, shortcuts, and the assumption that I'd always be there as a failsafe. He never planned for me to grow a spine, and now the spine was winning. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Linda, through her testimony, unearthed an old document signed by Grandpa himself indicating that my 40% wasn't just equity. It came with executive rights, including veto power on structural changes unless I was properly bought out through a specific clause, the very clause they had bypassed. Which meant every decision made post-voicemail, legally null. The Facebook deal vulnerable. The investor contract legally contestable. Suddenly, Everpoint held 40% of a company whose structural changes might have been fraudulent. Olivia's legal team pounced, not to destroy, but to demand renegotiation from a position of leverage. My silence hadn't been surrender, it had been set up. This new information hit like a legal bombshell. Mom's tone changed overnight. She called not to scold, not to guilt, but to ask for a meeting. Face to face. It was a Wednesday when we met, at her favorite restaurant. She had ordered before I arrived. I found it telling. She didn't waste time. Alex, I won't apologize. You embarrassed us. You weaponized your silence. I leaned back. No. I defended my position, quietly. You embarrassed yourselves by never imagining I could. She exhaled sharply. What do you want? That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? For years, all I wanted was respect. To be heard, seen, believed. Now I wanted clarity, closure, maybe, on some cruel poetic level, control. I want the business sold. I said, properly, joint decision, profit split, clean break. She blinked. That's drastic. No, that's clean. She paused, sipped water, and after. I disappear. You won't hear from me again. You get your perfect storybook image back. I get my peace. The moment froze. I saw her shoulders deflate not with defeat, but with recognition. Recognition that I meant it. And in that instant, a subtle shift occurred. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but understanding. We finished our meals in silence. She didn't hug me goodbye. But she didn't argue either. And that was enough for now. What came next would change everything. The boardroom, the sale, the decision that would mark the end of the Beaumont legacy and the rebirth of mine. In the weeks that followed that terse lunch, the wheels began to turn with a speed and weight none of us could stop. The conversation with Mom had been civil, but underneath her measured tone, I saw it resignation, a reluctant acknowledgement that this was no longer her narrative to control. The legal teams took over. Everpoint's lawyers issued a formal letter demanding a full audit, referencing the newly discovered veto clause. Grandpa had included the clause my mother and brother had conveniently forgotten. Their new partnership, built on rushed contracts and emotional ego, was suddenly dangling over a legal abyss. Nathan lost it. He showed up at my apartment building 2 nights later, pounding on the security glass, shouting my name like a drunken ghost haunting the wrong house. I didn't go down. I watched from the second-floor landing, hidden behind the curtain. He screamed about loyalty, about blood, about saving face and ruining everything over feelings. That word. Feelings. He still thought this was about hurt. He didn't get it. Not really. This wasn't personal anymore. It was structural. It was surgical. I wasn't trying to hurt them. I was excising a cancer. The sale process began. Olivia and Everpoint positioned their demand carefully buyout or full takeover. My 40% was now their 40%, and they had every right to challenge every transaction done in violation of that old clause, which included the flashy deal with Wallace and Pierce, the private investor group my family had courted in desperation. Turns out, Wallace and Pierce hadn't been told about the clause either. That got messy fast. W&P's legal department, furious at being misled, withdrew their offer and threatened to sue for damages. My family's new partner had become their biggest liability. Deals stalled, vendors panicked, clients began to pull out, quietly, but decisively. And then came the audit. It was brutal. Years of records, emails, payments, forged supplier signatures, inflated receivables all surfaced, and while I wasn't named as a whistleblower, the paper trail led straight back to the tidy archive I'd handed Olivia. I had spent years tracking those numbers not out of revenge, but out of necessity. But now they were the match that lit the pyre. The final board meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. Everyone was present: Mom, Nathan, 3 minor stakeholders, two of Everpoint's senior partners, and me. Mom wore her war paint makeup. Nathan looked like he hadn't slept in days. Olivia was calm, surgical, poised. I was strangely still. The meeting began with the agenda vote on dissolution of assets and formal sale of the company. But then Olivia stood. "Before we proceed," she said, "we must address a compliance concern." She handed out binders, black, thick, damning, each one a mirror reflecting what the Beaumont family had become, a house built on borrowed loyalty and borrowed money. Olivia outlined a sequence of financial irregularities, backdated checks, unauthorized loans, misappropriated payroll reserves, most of them tied directly to Nathan, some shamefully to Mom. The room was silent. I watched Nathan deflate in real time, his shoulders curling inward, his fingers twitching as if he could swipe the facts away like some app notification. Then came Olivia's final slide, a projection. "This business, based on current liabilities and exposure," she said coolly, "will default within 3 quarters unless immediate restructuring or liquidation occurs." Mom whispered something, prayer or profanity, I wasn't sure. The vote was unanimous. The business would be sold, assets liquidated, reputation salvaged, if only barely, and the proceeds split as per original ownership, which meant Everpoint would receive 40%, Mom 20%, Nathan nothing, because somewhere along the way, he had sold his stake back to the company years ago for liquidity, one of those desperate moves that didn't seem desperate at the time. I signed the final document in silence. When it was done, Mom reached into her purse, pulled out a folded photograph. It was old, faded, me at 10 years old, standing next to Grandpa outside the factory gates. We were both smiling. She slid it toward me without a word. I didn't take it. Some things can't be reclaimed. That night, I stood outside the now empty office building. The sign had already been removed. A man in a pickup was hauling the last boxes from the warehouse. I closed my eyes and breathed in the cool evening air. It was over. But there was one more thing I had to do. One final act, not of revenge, but of clarity. And it would begin with a letter. To Grandpa, 2 weeks after the liquidation, I mailed the letter. Not to an address, but to an old tree. Grandpa's tree. It stood at the edge of what used to be the factory's lot, right where the gravel gave way to grass. When I was little, he told me it had been planted the same year he opened Beaumont Tools. "Watch this tree," he'd said. "It'll tell you how the company's doing. If the tree thrives, so do we." The letter was short. I told him the truth, that the company was gone, that Mom and Nathan tried to erase me, but I walked away standing, that I used the very skills he taught me: patience, accuracy, discipline, not to hurt them, but to protect myself. I thanked him, not for the inheritance, but for the clarity, because what he built wasn't just a business, it was a standard, and the people who claimed his name failed that standard. I buried the envelope at the base of the tree and walked away. In the months that followed, silence returned. Mom retreated into semi-retirement, citing health concerns. A polite lie. Nathan left town. Rumors said he moved to Colorado to start fresh, but it smelled more like escape than reinvention. I didn't follow up. I moved. Too, not to run but to live. A new city, smaller apartment, no family name on the mailbox. I joined a local accounting firm, nothing flashy, just honest work. But for the first time in my life, the numbers I worked with weren't bailing anyone out. They were just numbers. Simple, neutral, free. Then one day an email arrived. Subject: Family History. Internship inquiry. It was from a girl named Casey, a college senior doing a paper on intergenerational family businesses. She'd stumbled on Beaumont Tools in a local archive. The story fascinated her, how a blue-collar operation grew fast, then imploded even faster. She wanted to interview someone close to the story, someone who'd lived it. I hesitated. Then I agreed. Not because I wanted attention, but because stories, real stories, deserve to be told, not just by winners, but by the ones who walked away. I met Casey at a coffee shop. She had a notepad and a quiet, focused energy. She asked thoughtful questions, not about drama, but about legacy, about choices, about silence. "What do you regret most?" she asked softly. I looked out the window. believing that loyalty always means staying. I said, "Sometimes it means leaving." She nodded, and I saw her eyes glisten, not with pity, but understanding. We talked for hours, and when she thanked me, I felt something shift, not closure, but acknowledgement. My story had mattered. A few weeks later, she sent me a copy of her paper. In the acknowledgements, my name appeared not as a source, but as a mentor. It broke me a little in the best way. From that moment, I started speaking more at local colleges, business ethics classes, not to air dirty laundry, but to talk about hard lessons, boundaries, consent, emotional labor, the price of silence. The more I spoke, the more people came up after, eyes wide with resonance. My dad did that to me too. I thought I was crazy. You made me feel less alone. Turns out, there are more of us than anyone admits. And we're not angry. We're awake. My life now, it's quiet. I cook more, I sleep better. I see friends who don't need me to explain why I left. I don't check my phone for missed calls from people who only dialed when something broke. One day, I got a package, no return address. Inside that photograph, Mom had slid across the table the one of me and Grandpa. On the back, in faint ink, a single line. "We saw you, just too late." I don't know if it was from her or someone else, doesn't matter. I didn't cry, but I held the photo for a long time. Because sometimes, revenge isn't rage. Sometimes, it's walking away head high, hands clean while they watch the empire fall without you. And sometimes, it's planting something new, right where the old tree used to stand. A tree with roots that remember, but branches that grow elsewhere. Away from the fire. Into the sun. Story 2. My name is Victoria Hale, 39, senior lecturer in strategic management at a Chicago university. For 13 years, I thought my marriage to Dr. Gregory Hale, 41, was as stable as the Midwest bedrock beneath our Craftsman home. We owned matching bikes, a rescue husky who understood 3 languages, and a Saturday ritual of sourdough pancakes before grading stacks of essays. Friends called us relationship goals. I believed them until last month, at 11:47 p.m. when Gregory's smartwatch pinged on the nightstand. "G Suite is confirmed view of the lake. M, can't wait to try out that view with you." Sweet Lake M was definitely not me. My pulse stalled. He slept beside me, breathing slow, unaware that everything he'd built with me was dissolving like frost on a windshield. Strangely, I didn't cry. I watched the blue glow fade, let the first shock harden into something crystalline and cold. Then I started counting backward from 10, the way I teach anxious freshmen before presentations. When I hit 1, I had a plan. Monday through Thursday, I moved like clockwork. Lectures, office hours, dog walks. Gregory kissed my cheek each morning, smelling of espresso and betrayal. Every lie he told slid off my new armor. Thursday night, he packed a single carry-on, humming. Big cardiology round table. Back late Saturday. Knock them dead, I said, voice smooth as iced vodka. When the door closed, I exhaled months of blind trust and let warrior air fill my lungs. Friday arrived icy and brilliant. I chose a crimson wrap dress Gregory once deemed too attention-seeking for academic dinners. I wore it anyway, along with lipstick the color of fresh cranberries and heels sharp enough to slice glass. Top Deck's host led me to a corner table with panoramic windows, a stage disguised as fine dining. 6:55 p.m. Noah entered, tall, gentle-eyed, coat dusted with snow. "Professor Hale, Victoria, please." I stood, shook his hand, warm, steady. He built bridges. After all. Conversation flowed green infrastructure, student projects, his love for restoring vintage guitars, yet my gaze drifted to the hotel lobby across the atrium. 7:12 p.m. Gregory arrived, scarf loose, laughing beside Maddie in a silver trench. They checked in, unaware. Noah followed my eyes. "Do you know them?" he asked lightly. "Very well," I replied. "You'll meet in a moment." I signaled our server for wine Pinot Noir, bold and honest, while the bottle breathed. I opened my handbag and slid a small photo on the table, a snapshot of Gregory and Maddie kissing outside a coffee shop 3 weeks earlier. Noah's smile faltered. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because that's your fiancé," I said, gently. "And my husband..." His world tilted, mine steadied. Across the glass, Gregory and Maddie reached the elevator bank. I rose. Walk with me, I told Noah. He followed, still shell-shocked. We crossed the atrium marble just as the elevator opened. 4 stunned eyes met ours. Time slowed. The air seemed to ring. Gregory's face drained, then flushed crimson. Maddie's clutch fell from her hand, scattering lip gloss and a hotel keycard. I stepped between them, voice low but carrying. Conference canceled. Doctor, he stammered my name like a lifeline. But there was none. Noah turned to Maddie, heartbreak carving new lines on his face. Tell me this isn't real. She opened her mouth, nothing came out. Security glanced over, curious. Guests whispered, yet I felt calm, almost surgical. Enjoy your suite, I said to the pair who used to direct their futures in secret. You'll need privacy to divide your lies. Noah looked at me broken, but grateful for the light. I rested a hand on his arm. We deserve better than borrowed rooms and half-truths. Let's leave them to it. He nodded once. Together we walked back toward the city lights, 2 strangers linked by shared wreckage, breathing the same cold night air. Chicago woke beneath freezing drizzle, the kind that coats every surface in thin armor. I felt the irony. My marriage had cracked. Now the city wore glass. Gregory returned Saturday night. I was gone. Husky fed. Closet stripped of my things. A simple note on the kitchen island. Keys are in the bowl. Lawyer will call Monday. No shouting, no apologies rehearsed in a mirror, just procedural truth. I arrived on campus early, espresso in hand, syllabus tucked under one arm. Word travels faster than Wi-Fi. Colleagues eyed me with delicate concern. Our dean cornered me after lecture. Victoria, rumor says your husband. I raised a palm. Private matter. Handled. She nodded, but the subtext was clear. Chaos at home can spill into classrooms. I refused to let Gregory's choices stain my professional skin. I filed for divorce that afternoon, citing irreconcilable duplicity, a term my attorney chuckled at, then kept. That same hour, Noah messaged, need to talk. Evidence keeps surfacing. We agreed on neutral ground, a riverside cafe populated by laptop jockeys and zero memories. Noah slid a folder across the small table. Inside were hotel folios, restaurant charges, rideshare logs, Maddie's digital footprints stretching back 6 months. He'd built timelines, color-coded overlaps between her lab weekends and Gregory's conference cycles. The precision impressed me. Structural engineers love clean lines, even in heartbreak. What do you want to do with it? I asked, fingertips grazing the paper. Nothing illegal. His gaze was steady, voice low. But I won't let them rewrite history as a harmless fling. My family deserves facts. So did mine. We made an agreement, share data, protect dignity, no tabloid drama. Before leaving, Noah placed one more item on the table, a thumb drive labeled Torres Grant Study. Maddie's department gets federal money. He said, I spotted duplicate invoices, looks shady. Academic fraud in Gregory's research group. My pulse quickened. Betrayal of vows was personal. Misuse of public funds was professional suicide. I slid the drive into my coat. I'll analyze it tonight. Gregory texted nonstop. Please speak to me. Therapy. Anything? I muted the thread and prepared a terse email to the hospital compliance officer. Subject: potential irregularities in cardioimmunology. Grant number CI-882. Attached preliminary spreadsheet. No emotions, just numbers. By noon, compliance summoned Gregory to an emergency review. He must have felt déjà vu, 2 disasters, both signed Victoria. I imagined his pulse on the elevator ride finally matching mine from that night. Maddie posted a black and white selfie captioned, taking time for self-care. Pray for me. Comments overflowed with digital hugs. None knew why she'd been placed on administrative leave hours earlier. The internet loves a vague victim narrative. I refused to play antagonist online. Truth would surface in auditors' reports, not hashtags. Still, message requests poured in. Some curious, some vicious, a few anonymous threats. I locked my socials. Reminded myself that silence isn't weakness, it's premium fuel for patience. Between lectures, I found space to breathe. I visited my new apartment, a renovated loft near the L tracks. Exposed brick, giant windows, zero ghosts. I set my suitcase on the hardwood and watched trains blur past, each car whispering forward, forward. That night, Noah and I met again, this time at a jazz bar where horns drowned memory. We didn't talk about Gregory or Maddie. We talked about dog parks, design competitions, our shared fear of karaoke. Laughter came easier than expected, like muscles remembering range. When the band slid into a slow blues number, Noah hesitated, then offered his hand. I shook my head with a half smile. Too soon to dance. He didn't push. Next time, he said. The promise felt light, unbinding. 7 a.m. Gregory rang my office line, a relic he knew I couldn't block. I answered, voice even. They suspended me. He blurted, compliance thinks I falsified invoices. You tipped them off, I provided data. I replied. They drew conclusions. Silence. I could hear his breathing, ragged edges of panic. Help me, he finally whispered. I already did, I said. I stopped you before jail followed infidelity. I hung up and stared at the skyline. Morning sun turning glass towers gold. Pity flickered, then faded. Some lessons require full weight. But divorce proceedings accelerated. Gregory conceded the house to avoid forensic audits of marital finances. Maddie's research grant froze pending federal review. Her Insta-halo dimmed. Latest post showed a generic sunrise with no caption, a digital walk of shame. Noah accepted a visiting critic role for my design strategy seminar. The students loved his grounded insight. I loved that the invitation needed no disguise. After class, we shared streetcar tacos on a bench overlooking the frozen river. Snowflakes dusted his hair. He didn't mind. Strange, he said, smiling wryly. How ruin can clear the view. I nodded, savoring the quiet click of something new locking into place. Not romance. Not yet. More like scaffolding. Strong enough to carry us while we rebuild. A process server delivered papers to my old driveway at dawn. Neighbors watched Gregory sign for a thick envelope from the U.S. Office of Research Integrity. Word raced faster than gossip. Dr. Hale under federal review. By noon, Hospital PR released a single-sentence bulletin. Dr. Gregory Hale is on unpaid leave pending investigation. I sipped tea in my new loft and forwarded the link to my attorney. One more knot untied. Maddie went live on social, tears glittering under ring light glow. She claimed sexism, jealous colleagues, an ex who weaponized spreadsheets. Half her followers offered sympathy emojis. The other half demanded receipts. An hour later, the hospital quietly posted documentation of falsified invoices, dates, vendors, totals. Hashtags flipped from #stand with Maddie to #science scam overnight. Algorithms know fresh blood. The dean summoned me, but not for a reprimand. Victoria, the board saw how you handled a crisis with precision, she said, sliding an envelope across the desk. We'd like you to head the new Ethics and Entrepreneurship Center. Promotion, budget, autonomy. I nodded once, pulse steady. Private wreckage had forged public credibility. Outside, I texted Noah. Celebratory coffee. His reply arrived before the screen dimmed. Latte or espresso? Both. Life's short. No tourists in January. Just us and a guide wrapped in 3 scarves describing truss bridges. We stood on the deck. River ice clinking against the hull like nervous applause. I used to picture Maddie beside me on things like this, Noah admitted. Gaze on the skyline. I used to plan conferences around Gregory's schedule. I answered. We let the wind carry both confessions away. Then he smiled. Small but real. I felt ribs unclench I hadn't known were tight. Gregory called. Frantic. Judge had frozen his personal accounts pending audit. You did this, he hissed. No, I said. Voice calm. You filed the invoices. I just refused to hide them. He begged for character testimony. I offered silence. Integrity is not a buffet. Lakeshore Medical Foundation. My name printed alone. Gregory's board slot was empty. Optics mattered. Minutes later, Noah forwarded the same invite. Maddie's +1 now ghosted. Coincidence tasted like opportunity. Go together, I typed. Reverse Cinderella, he responded. Midnight, but shoes stay on. I laughed out loud, the sound startling my dog and even myself. Snowflakes spun under floodlights as we walked the blue carpet between reporters. Noah in charcoal tux, me in midnight jumpsuit with pockets deep enough for phone and fortitude. Cameras flashed, but no one shouted our names. We were background to richer scandals swirling inside. The aquarium glowed cerulean. String quartet played Clair de Lune. Moonlight filtered through tanks of silent stingrays. At 8 p.m., the foundation chair tapped a glass, due to investigation findings. Dr. Gregory Hale and Ms. Madeline Torres have been removed from honorary positions. Gasps rippled like startled fish. 2 spotlights found Gregory and Maddie near the reef tunnel. Gregory's tie hung askew. Maddie's smile twitched, frozen under mascara. Reporters surged. Questions flew. Fraud affair, resignations. Security intervened. In the chaos, Maddie snapped voice sharp, blaming a bitter professor and her pet engineer. Her microphone squealed. Donors recoiled. I felt no triumph, only closure. Lies were oxygen to them. Truth had suffocated the flame. Noah and I slipped away to a quiet wing where leafy sea dragons drifted like slow confetti. We stood in green light, hearing only water pumps and our own breathing. He spoke first. When foundations crack, some houses fall, others rebuild on steel. I met his eyes. Which are we? Design in progress, he said, reaching for my hand, not gripping, just offering. I let our fingers mesh, light as coral fans swaying. Snow had deepened, city noise muted. We stood under the stone whales guarding the entrance. I don't know tomorrow, I admitted. Tenure review, legal depositions. It's messy. He squeezed my hand once. Messy isn't fatal. Structural loads shift. We reinforce. The chill turned our breath into brief clouds. Streetlights painted halos on his hair. Something warm sparked beneath my ribs. Hope. Maybe. A cab pulled up. He opened the door but didn't release my hand until I was seated. Text when you're home, he said. Count on it. Bridge builder. As the car pulled away, I looked back. He stood, hands in pockets, snow swirling like confetti at a parade no one planned but both survived. Monday, hospital announces full cooperation with federal investigators. Wednesday, grant funding redirected to patient services, staff cheer. Thursday, my new ethics center receives seed money from an anonymous donor. The dean winks. I suspect Noah. Friday, divorce finalized. Freedom arrives as a stamped decree in a plain envelope. I frame it like art. 2 calendars now hang above my desk. One lists lecture dates, the other is blank, titled Adventures Unscheduled. First entry may be a summer trek across Scandinavian bridges. Noah keeps sketching on napkins. Or maybe open mic karaoke fear faced together. Spring drifted into Chicago on shy breezes that smelled of thawed earth and bus exhaust. The city felt lighter, as if someone had opened a window after a long quarrel. I matched that feeling. Paper signed. Keys returned. New title on my office door, Director, Center for Ethical Entrepreneurship. My last lecture met in the atrium because students begged for sunlight, while they sketched business ethics mind maps on butcher paper. I caught myself humming. 10 months earlier, I'd stood in a restaurant pulsing with betrayal. Now I was a woman whose chest didn't tighten when her phone buzzed. After class, I wrote 3 words on the board. Keep asking why erased nothing, and locked the room. Some endings deserve permanence. Noah waited outside with 2 cappuccinos balanced on a blueprint tube. He'd spent the week in Milwaukee pitching a Riverwalk redesign and looked travel rumpled in the best way. Walk, he asked. We strolled the lakefront path, foam edging the shore. He unrolled the blueprint on a picnic table, sweeping pedestrian bridges, solar-lit benches, native reeds reclaiming concrete edges. What do you see missing? He asked. Nothing. I breathed. Then come see it happen. Firm wants me on site this summer. 2 months by the water. He watched my face, careful but hopeful. There's a guest loft above the site office, huge windows, terrible Wi-Fi, 1 dog allowed. I pictured my husky asleep under a drafting table, lake wind in my hair instead of classroom stale air. Fear bubbled, leave tenure track comfort, yet excitement shimmered louder than nerves. Semester ends in 2 weeks, I said slowly. My center can run remote for a spell. His smile answered. Gregory pled guilty to grant fraud. Avoided jail with massive fines and a 5-year research ban. Press photos showed a man older than his age. Eyes hollow, suit hanging wrong. I felt something, not anger, not pity, just distance. Maddie influencing days over. Account dormant. Rumor says she's back in her hometown finishing a nursing degree. Might even help people now. That's a plot twist I can accept. House sale closed above asking. My share paid off student loan leftovers and funded the Ethics Center's first scholarship, anonymously named after my grandmother who taught me to spell integrity. On moving day, I stood in my empty loft, palms against the cool brick. It had been a cocoon, now it was someone else's future. I left behind a note in the kitchen drawer, "You are stronger than your storm, trust the rebuild." We drove north in Noah's truck. Dogs sprawled across suitcases, jazz on low volume. City skyline receded in rearview mirrors like a chapter heading sliding off a screen. An hour out, rain tapped the windshield. Noah pulled over at a diner shaped like a lighthouse. Over pie, we wrote a list titled, "Things We're Afraid of." Missing deadlines. Loving again and failing. Husky eating architectural models. Karaoke. We laughed, signed the bottom, and taped it to the dashboard as a packed fears named Lose Power. Days smelled of sawdust and lake algae. I reviewed grant proposals via video calls under gull shrieks. Evenings we kayaked glassy water flaming with sunset. We established Wednesday honesty hour, phones off. Coffee strong, one question each no matter how raw. The first week he asked, "Do you still flinch at anniversaries?" I answered yes. I asked, "Do you replay the hotel lobby?" He shook his head, "Not since the boat." By July, the questions grew lighter. Favorite street food. Secret childhood ambition. Trust stitched itself quietly, like skin closing under gauze. Late August. The new pedestrian span rolled into place. Crowds gathered. The mayor snipped ribbon. Drone cameras hummed. Yet the moment that pricked my heart was smaller. Noah pressing his thumbprint into wet concrete at the abutment, then guiding my hand to set mine beside his. Two prints, side by side, sealed under the date. Bridges, like relationships, need paired anchors. That night, workers strung fairy lights along the railings. We returned after midnight, just us and the hush of water. I set a portable speaker on the deck, cued a song slow, brave. "Ready to settle the karaoke fear?" I asked. He bowed like a patient host. We danced, offbeat, laughing. My voice cracked on high notes, his baritone rumbled off key. Fireflies answered like applause. Nobody filmed it, that made it perfect. Under the glow, he brushed hair from my face, asked with steady certainty, "Blueprint partner, life edition." I didn't need to count backward from 10. "Yes," I whispered, clear as moonlight on the planks. Back in Chicago, the Ethics Center walls display student projects tackling real corruption. Above my desk hangs a framed napkin sketch, our bridge with tiny stick figures, one holding a microphone, one holding a husky leash. Every Monday, a freshman asks, "Professor Hale, sorry, Professor Reed, what's the most important lesson in strategic management?" I smile. Think of a watch that once buzzed betrayal, then of a lake wind that carried me into morning. Simple. I say, audit your values before someone else audits your life. And if collapse comes, build the next span stronger. They nod. Scribble. I turn toward the window where the skyline gleams. Somewhere north, a bridge holds two thumbprints, steadfast against weather. I take a breath full of promise and open my planner, where the next blank Saturday reads Milwaukee Street Fair Live Band, Bring Courage to Sing. Story 3. My name is Amelia Clark. I'm 34, and tonight I learned how loud a laugh can feel when it's aimed straight at your ribs. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above a hotel ballroom. Waiters drifted like ghosts. My husband, Victor Langford, 38, rising star at Mariner Bank, stood to deliver his favorite monthly joke. "Here's to Amelia's never-ending sabbatical," he declared. "Champagne high, may the job market keep her entertained." The table erupted, cufflinks clinking, monocles of scotch sloshing. I lifted my glass, eyes lowered, smile shy. Let them gloat. Masks work best when painted with weakness. None of them knew the woman they mocked owns the algorithms that power their trading floor. I am the founder and majority shareholder of Northbridge Quantum, a company wrapped in shell licenses and quiet lawyers. The stake sits in trusts, invisible to Victor's shallow gaze. Tomorrow he'll finally spot it, but he'll be too busy watching his world burn to enjoy the view. Victor and I met before prototypes, before venture rounds. He was magnetic, promising partnership of equals. I worried early success might tilt the scales, so I told half a story freelance behavioral economics gigs, Irregular invoices, modest flat. He applauded the humility. I applauded the experiment. Northbridge sprinted defense contracts, medical simulations, an IPO under a different banner. Victor's warmth cooled. Gentle nudges became barbs. Cute hobby. Mel, one day you'll get a real job. With every jab, I shrank a little smaller in public and grew a little sharper in private. When Mariner hired Victor, he boasted about exclusive data he bought for pennies. I recognized the fingerprints, my proprietary code. His eagerness outpaced his caution. He bragged louder, hid nothing, left emails half deleted on a shared laptop. I called Lila Mendoza, college roommate turned forensic accountant, add 3 white hat hackers, and we had a shadow unit. Tracing Victor's breadcrumbs revealed raw insider trades. Laundered crypto. Blackmail of junior staff. Evidence mounted. Anger cooled into strategy. String music wandered into Gershwin. Victor patted my shoulder like a coach encouraging a bench warmer. Maybe we'll find you a receptionist slot. Sweetheart, good view of the action. Laughter again, sharper. I excused myself and stepped into a silent corridor. Phase 3 is live, I whispered into my phone. Regulators hit at 9. Lila replied, ready for the board at 10. Always. Back in the ballroom, I played the dutiful ornament until the last petit four vanished. The limo ride home was quiet city lights and Victor's satisfied sighs. You were awfully quiet, he said. Tipsy. Promise me no gloom. I'll book that recruiter. I'll handle my future, I answered. He chuckled, missed the edge. At the penthouse, he slept fast. I opened my laptop. Transaction logs, voice memos, shell company charts all zipped into a folder named Midnight Symphony. A single key sent copies to regulators, 2 national papers, and every Northbridge director. It's 4:59. First light sliced the skyline. I pressed send. Tomorrow the mask drops, and when it does, no one at Victor's table will laugh louder than me. I barely slept. But adrenaline feels a lot like coffee when the sun rises on Reckoning Day. At 7:05 a.m., a fleet of silver sedans lined up outside Mariner Bank's granite tower. Men and women in navy windbreakers filed out, letters of authority flashing at the revolving doors. From the balcony of our penthouse, I saw Victor's office lights blink on, then off, like a nervous heartbeat. I changed into a charcoal suit Victor had never seen, tied my curls into a knot, and took the subway. Anonymity tastes better than leather seats when you need perspective. I arrived in the lobby just as security ushers began herding employees to the auditorium for an urgent all hands. Inside, 400 bankers sat rigid while Ellen Price, the bank's general counsel, adjusted a mic that squealed. Federal investigators are reviewing several desks, she said, voice calm but wrists trembling. Trading will remain halted until further notice. Gasps slithered through the rows. Victor stormed down the aisle, jacket half buttoned. This is outrageous, he barked. Who authorized? Your credentials have been suspended. Mr. Langford, Price cut in. Please take a seat. His glare searched for allies. The usual nods were glued to phones. Screens already blared headlines: Mariner execs tied to quantum data leak. He finally spotted me 3 rows back. I tilted my head, almost sympathetic. 90 minutes later, while agents rummaged in cubicles, I slipped into an unused conference room and texted Lila. Stage A confirmed. Board at 10 sharp. A shadow filled the glass wall Victor had followed. He shut the door behind him. Why are you here? Amelia, reporters outside already think I'm Satan. I came to bring you breakfast, I said, gesturing to the untouched pastry tray. You'll need strength. He studied me. Confusion trading places with anger. You think this is funny? No, necessary. For a second I saw the man I once trusted, terrified beneath bravado. Then ego reclaimed him. This audit will fizzle. I've survived worse. I almost admired the delusion. Victor, you haven't even read the warrant. They're downloading 6 years of emails. He pointed at me. If you loved me, you'd defend me. I opened the door. If you'd loved me, I wouldn't be standing with the prosecutors. At 10 sharp, Mariner's directors gathered 11 gray suits, 1 bright red mine. They knew Amelia Clark only as Victor's quiet spouse. Today the nameplate read, A. Clark, Northbridge representative. Their eyes widened. I hold 27% of your primary data provider, I began. That provider owns the predictive models you've siphoned without license. Here's the invoice you ignored. I slid copies across the walnut slab. And here are transaction logs proving Mr. Langford approved every unauthorized pull. Victor lunged for the papers. The chairwoman raised a palm. Sit. An outside counsel cleared his throat. Mrs. Clark, are you claiming proprietary theft? I'm presenting it. Claim was filed at dawn. I clicked a remote. A wall-sized display lit with flowcharts of crypto shells, timestamp trades, Slack chats dotted with Victor's avatar bragging, got the quantum feed cheap, wife thinks I'm a genius. Silence can roar louder than applause. Directors whispered, pens jittering. The chairwoman finally spoke, effective immediately. Mr. Langford is relieved of all duties pending investigation. Victor's face drained. You can't. We just did. Security escorted him out, tie askew, disbelief etched in every step. I kept my gaze steady until the door shut, then turned back. Northbridge is willing to license the feed properly, I said. If Mariner commits to a compliance overhaul and a restitution fund for retail clients damaged by the tainted trades, they accepted faster than coffee cools. I walked past reporters clustered like seagulls, microphones lunged. Mrs. Langford, did you know about the fraud? One shouted. I paused. It's Clark, I corrected, and I knew enough to stop it. A taxi carried me north. Away from skyscrapers, my phone buzzed Victor. I let it ring, picturing him in the back of a sedan, reputation unraveling stitch by stitch. Another call, this one from Lila. Audit team found a slush account funding a private villa in Montenegro. Anything I should flag? Yes, I said. Eyes on the river sliding past. Flag every cent. We'll send it to the restitution pool. At home, I opened the balcony doors. City haze glowed amber. Sirens wailed in the distance. Yet my apartment felt strangely still, like the hush after thunder. I made tea, sat at the piano, played the opening bars of a piece Victor hated. Each note sounded clearer without his commentary. Tomorrow the headlines will multiply, the lawyers will bicker, and employees will wonder what comes next. They'll learn soon I'm buying a controlling stake in Mariner's tech division and installing governance that values brains over bluster. But tonight I let the music spill through the apartment, a private requiem for a marriage built. Victor once told me power is won by the bold. He forgot to mention it's lost by the blind. The night's first star flickered above the skyline. I hit the final chord and whispered, 2 parts down, 2 to go. The sun barely cleared the East River when the first aftershocks hit. An emergency notice flashed across every financial terminal. Mariner Bank trading suspended, pending federal inquiry. Liquidity evaporated in minutes. Reporters labeled it Langford Gate. I dressed before dawn. Dark jeans, no armor of silk. My inbox throbbed with pleas. Junior analysts begging for reassurance. Angry shareholders demanding blood. Victor's relatives howling about family shame. I answered none. Action speaks louder. By mid-morning, I was back in the marbled lobby. Badge upgraded to Interim Chief Innovation Officer. The title was temporary. The work couldn't wait. First task, keep panic from becoming collapse. I convened a war room of the youngest quants, bright, untainted minds ignored by Victor's entourage. We dissected risk models, scrubbed every algorithm that touched the stolen feed, and replaced them with a legal Northbridge sandbox. To my surprise, the kids stayed past midnight, fueled by ramen and righteous fury. Lena Patel, a 23-year-old prodigy, grinned while rewriting half the codebase. Been dying to fix this spaghetti, she said. I realized hope can grow where greed once settled like mold. Hope lasted 12 hours. At 4 a.m., my phone buzzed, incoming file from V. Langford. A single audio clip. Victor's voice calm, rehearsed. Amelia, walk away. I've copied your personal tax shelters and draft patents. I go down. You burn too. Threat by implication. Classic. I forwarded the file to Lila, then exhaled the tremor out of my chest. Victor was cornered, but a cornered ego is a feral thing. The regulators found only half the dirt. My team wanted the rest. Using court-approved warrants, we drilled into encrypted backups Victor thought were safe. Hidden folders revealed an entire shadow exchange, fake orders pumped to spike microcap prices, kickbacks laundered through an art gallery in Luxembourg. One name kept surfacing, Walter Dresch. An external consultant who coached traders on timing the fraud. He sat on the board of a rival fintech firm that hated Northbridge. Perfect. I sent the dossier to both the FBI and to Walter's own investors with a polite cover note, might affect your afternoon. 3 days after the raid, cameras crowded a glass podium in Mariner's atrium. I wore no red this time, just a navy blazer and a steel gray voice. Mariner Bank will honor every customer position. I said, we are cooperating fully. Restitution funds are already capitalized. A reporter shouted, are you qualified to lead a bank turnaround? I'm qualified to own the tools you've been quoting for 5 years. I answered, next question. Applause rippled from employees on the mezzanine. Small, but it cracked the tension like dawn cracks night. That afternoon, an alarm blared through my office. Victor had tried to enter the building using an old contractor badge. Security caught him in the elevator bank, pockets stuffed with USB drives. He ranted about reclaiming his legacy. I watched on the monitor, heart unexpectedly heavy. This was the man who once brought me soup at 3 a.m. during a flu. Now he looked hollow, suit wrinkled, a king without a map. Security handed him to federal marshals. I turned away before the elevator doors shut. Sympathy is healthy, interference is not. With Victor neutralized, attention turned to Walter Dresch. His arrest clipped across news tickers at dawn. Stock of his fintech cratered 70%. Mariner's board, chastened, granted me a mandate to rebuild compliance without budget caps. I phoned Dr. Sophia Reyes, whistleblowing legend who once dismantled a Latin American Ponzi scheme. She accepted before I finished the sentence. When she stepped into headquarters pixie cut, leather journal, eyes like x-rays, the old guard managers visibly shrank. Good. Fear of integrity can be useful. Cleaning culture means touching pain. We set up an anonymous portal, stories flooded in unpaid overtime forced under threat, a trader who locked interns in a conference room to finish his slide deck, a female programmer blacklisted after rejecting drinks with a VP. Each claim earned an interview, a paper trail, and where warranted a termination. Some departures were loud, some tearful. By week's end, 50 staff had badges disabled. The true surprise productivity rose. Rooms once tense hummed with collaboration. People finally exhaled. Late Friday, I sat alone in the same hotel where Victor's joke had launched my chess match. The maitre d' recognized me but said nothing. Over risotto, I opened a letter from Victor's mother. He's blaming you. I'm begging for mercy. Pain pulsed behind my ribs. I drafted a reply. Mrs. Langford, I will not influence the court. Your son charts his own redemption now. I meant it. Vengeance had served its purpose. Justice could handle the rest. Lila's team completed the financial autopsy. Losses were brutal but survivable. Insurance payouts paired with restitution clawbacks ensured no customer funds would vanish. Mariner's share price even rose on rumors of Northbridge's deeper integration. I walked the trading floor at dawn. Monitors glowed green. Phones rang with opportunity rather than panic. Lena waved me over, eyes bright. Prototypes done. Real-time compliance flags on every trade. Hope, concrete at last. At 6 a.m., Sophia appeared, breathless. We found something else, she said, handing me a thumb drive. It's not just fraud, there's a breach tied to an international money laundering ring. Names go higher than Victor. Higher, how, I asked. She glanced toward the eastern windows, where sunrise painted the skyline blood orange. Government minister higher. My pulse quickened. Victor's empire was only the first domino. I pocketed the drive, collecting the weight of new wars to fight. Behind me, the floor clocks flipped from 05:59 to 06:00, another minute purchased, another battle queued. I squared my shoulders. Let's get to work, I said. Dawn stained the conference glass red while Dr. Sophia's thumb drive pulsed in my palm. A minister on the take, offshore wires looping through Mariner's rogue desk. The stakes had just leapt from corporate scandal to national headline. We set up in a windowless archive room. Lila's laptop projected code waterfalls. Sophia layered political names over transaction nodes. The pattern was unmistakable. Minister Harold Grafton, chair of the Economic Renewal Committee, received consulting fees from the Luxembourg Gallery every quarter, money washed straight from Victor's pump-and-dump side pot. Grafton oversees banking regulation. Sophia whispered, he's the firewall Mariner thought it owned. Fear flickered, then steadied into focus. Can we prove he knew the source? She highlighted a folder of voice memos. Harold chuckling, tell Vic the gallery pieces look divine. Same split as usual. Proof enough. FBI contacts urged silence until indictments. Journalists begged for leaks. I picked a third road. We invited the Senate Oversight Subcommittee to hold an open hearing at Mariners Auditorium, cameras mandatory, transparency as antidote. Preparation was war. Quants ensured systems would stay green during broadcast. HR arranged counseling for staff blindsided by the news. Legal teams rehearsed answers that held truth without breaching gag orders. The night before, I walked the empty auditorium. Seats waited like silent jurors. I remembered Victor's toast, the sting of smallness, and felt the bruise finally fade. Television trucks ringed the block. Inside, senators untangled microphone wires while aides stacked binders. Minister Grafton strode in, tan immaculate, smile brittle. I testified first. Plain words, no flourish. Northbridge data was stolen. Funds were laundered through art assets. Recipients included government officials responsible for market oversight. Grafton's turn came. Sophia cued the audio clip. His jaw tightened as his own laughter filled the hall. The committee chair leaned forward. Minister, can you explain that familiarity with Mr. Langford? Silence thicker than oak. Cameras zoomed. In 15 seconds, Grafton asked for legal counsel. In 30, he was escorted out. Stock tickers downtown jumped like cut power lines, uncertainty, but also relief. That evening, Victor phoned from federal detention. One call allowed. Amelia, he said, voice small. They offered 12 years if I cooperate. Then cooperate, I answered. A pause. Did you ever love me? I loved the man who existed before the mirror became his god. He sighed a sound of defeat. Maybe acceptance. The line clicked dead. Weeks blurred into steady progress. Regulators appointed an external monitor, but soon praised our self-repair. Clients returned faster than projections. The restitution fund reached full capitalization. Early claimants received checks with apology letters I signed myself. We rebranded the trading floor. The forge a nod to tempering steel. Lena's compliance engine now flashed green lights across Bloomberg terminals nationwide. Licensed to 3 rival banks, we'd turned a weapon into a shield industry-wide. Employees started a ritual every Friday at 4. They ring a brass bell salvaged from the old server room, celebrating another scandal-free week. Simple, but thunderous. Divorce hearings were brisk. Victor ceded the penthouse. I sold it and split proceeds with the restitution pool. Commentators called it magnanimous. Really, I just wanted clean walls. I moved into a rebuild of my first apartment, exposed brick, second-hand couch, balcony herbs. Freedom fits better than luxury. Victor wrote once from prison orientation, apologizing without excuses. I filed the letter, unopened, in a drawer marked closed accounts. One quiet Saturday, Lena invited me to a rooftop potluck. Interns, janitors, senior analysts all laughing over plastic plates, no hierarchies, just teammates. Watching them, I realized the culture shift was real, not memo deep. Sophia joined me at the rail. You did it, she said. We did, I corrected, but markets forget faster than people heal. We stay vigilant. She raised her lemonade to vigilance, then. We clinked paper cups. Mid-July brought one final headline: Grafton pleads guilty, implicates network of officials. The domino line stretched far beyond Mariner. Reform bills sailed through Parliament by autumn. Sometimes justice just needs a loud door kick. I walked along the river that night, wind warm against the water. For the first time in years, I wasn't strategizing. I was simply present, feet tapping wood planks, city lights dancing on ripples. Back home, I opened my journal to write the note I'd once needed. Dear Amelia, who swallowed the joke, silence is not humility. Smallness is never safety. The world will size you by the story you tell, so write your own ledger. Inked bold. When their laughter rises, let it echo off the steel you're forging. Remember, power hoarded rots, power shared grows. Stand tall, pour your own toast, and ring the bell when the week is good. I set the pen down. Outside, fireworks from some distant festival lit the horizon red, gold, violet. Not a victory lap, just a reminder that light always finds room in the sky. I closed the window, breathed jasmine night. and felt the future settle on my shoulders like a well-cut coat light. Strong, perfectly mine.